Another awesome feature they have added to Unity 5.3 is the ability to create 2D primitive shapes, like squares, triangles, and diamonds, and so on. And these shapes are of course meant to prototype and stuff. They have always had the functionality for 3D objects, or for 3D games, by going to the Game Object menu, select 3D object, and then add any of these shapes here. And you would be able to use any of these shapes to prototype your games. But for 2D, we didn't have that. We only have the sprite option here. And what I usually did was just to add a sprite and then select under sprites here and then find one of the standard sprites they have and then just prototype with them until I figured out if my game worked. And then I would create some sprite or get some sprite that would work with that game. But they have actually added the possibility for creating 2D primitive shapes the same way as we could create the primitive 3D objects. And they have done that by going to Assets and Create, and under here we have a Sprite menu. And in that Sprite menu we have some different shapes we can add. We can try to add a hexagon, and when we add something it actually creates the object in the folder that you have selected. And it's basically just a what's called a prefab of a sprite. So now you can see we have a hexagon here. You can also add some others, other shapes. Let's go to prefabs, go to assets and create a sprite again. And now we can try to create a square, for example. So this is just my square and I'm going to call it water. Because we can actually use this square here to demonstrate some other features they have added to Unity, to the new 2D aspect of Unity. One of the features they have added is a buoyancy component, I think it's called. Let's see what it's called. It's called a Buoyancy Effector. Buoyancy Effector, if I could pronounce that correctly. So Buoyancy Effector, and the Buoyancy Effector actually makes it possible for us to drop some objects in some water or create a sprite that reacts as water so the object can fall into it and then bounce around in it. So let's try to take this water here and scale it up a bit. Let's say that the bottom of our level here is actually filled with water. And we can take the waters and make it a little bluish here, and then make it a little alpha here. So now the bottom of our level is water. And what we would like to do is to take our tree and move it up here, for example, and our snowman, he should also be somewhere up here so he can fall to the ground. Exactly. I didn't want to scale him. Let's actually just move him over here. And the eye glow, what should I do with that? I can take it up here and just rotate a little. There we go. So now everything is going to fall into the water. But to make it into water, we'll have to select the water and add component, and then let's see if we can find it. What was it called? Buoyancy, if I can spell correctly. Yeah, Buoyancy Effector. Selected. And the effector will not function until there's at least one enabled 2D collider. So let's click add component and add a box 2D collider to the water. And let's say that this collider uses the effector. And the collider is triggered unchecked, so we'll also have to check it as a trigger. So now it should actually work. So here's the surface level. That means that the surface level on the buoyancy is here. Oh, of the water is here. What else do we have? We have some density and some other things. Let's try to let it fall into it right now, and then we can play around with the settings. If we select all of these, let's see, they don't have rigid bodies on them, so I would just select all my sprites here, and I would add a rigid body to all of them so that they can fall. Okay, I can't do that. Icebox has it. Let's try again. Add component, rigid body 2D. There we go. Okay, so if we play this game, let's see what happens. Or actually, I think they would need to have collision on them as well. Let's add some box colliders to them. And the icebox does already have this. Let's try, see what happens. And let's remove our platforms, of course, so that they are not in the way. There we go. And this bottom platform, let's move the floor as well. There we go. So let's see what happens when they fall. And then you can see that they fall into the water and then they bounce around kinda as if it was like normal water. And we can of course play around with the water. Let's say density, if we set it up, let's see what happens if it bounces less or more. Now you can see it bounces more because density is up. What else can we play with? There's some drag here, some angles, flow magnitude, let's set it to 100, let's see what happens. Put them in now, then they flow to that side. Okay, let's just say that there is -10 flow variation. We can also variate it, but as you can see here, we can add some different stuff to this one. Now you can see they bounce slowly to the left. Now they float to the left here like it is actual water. So this is a very, very cool new effect that they have added to Unity, I think. As you can see now, they fall off the screen, but I guess you get the idea. So you can play around with different settings here of this buoyancy effector. And this surface level here decides where the surface is. As you can see here, this one moves when I move it up and down. Yes, so that's basically the buoyancy effect. I'm not going to play more around with it, but you can test it out yourself and see how it works.